There's 2 more people connecting now.
Mark, good evening. Can you hear me, Mark Goldthorpe? No. If you can't hear me, I'm not sure who else can hear or not. Mark, can you hear me? Okay. There's a guy coming on tonight, hopefully Timo. Colin knows him, and he's desperate to meet you. He's a brilliant artist, a musician artist as well, and I've mentioned what you're doing, and he loves the sound of it. So if he comes on, do say hello to him.
Excellent.
I think I should make a start, Gwen, or wait a couple more minutes?
Up to you, Khandiz, yeah.
Khandiz, would you like to wait a few more minutes or make a start?
Let's make a start. It's everybody's evening. Let's just get to it.
Okay. First of all, I'd just like to thank you for all joining tonight. It's great to see a lot of ASP members here and new faces too. If you don't know anything about ASP yet, I'd just like to say that we are a community of sustainability practitioners, that we're all from all over the world with a variety of skills and ideas, and all collectively working to make the world that we live in a better place. We connect, support and challenge each other to share and develop ideas and collaborate on events like these. If you aren't a member already, you can head over to our website. I'll pop a link to it in the chat box at the end, and have a look about more about ASP and what we do. It's roughly, we are a platform where members can collectively help and share each other's ideas and find solutions to fight the environmental issues we face today. I'm now going to hand over to Elise, who is going to introduce our guest speaker tonight and a few practicalities of the event.
Hi all, thank you for joining. I'm Elise. I do recognise a few of you, so it's nice to see you and nice to welcome some new faces, so thank you for joining. The title of the presentation this evening is about the I Am Impact project, and we'd like to introduce Khandiz Joni, who is the creative. She has created this project herself on her own through her experience, and Khandiz is an artist, and she's got into contact with Gwyn and ASP recently to share her ideas and her main project that she will be presenting to us this evening. It sort of brings that relationship between the human body and the planet, and it has a lot of links to sustainability that we could all relate to, but there'll be some things that you may be quite things that will open your eyes for sure. So I will hand her over to Khandiz in a second just to give her a little bit more information so she can speak about that. But the design of the evening online tonight is going to be Khandiz speaking and presenting her project to us, and then we're going to have a discussion and an option for questions or just comments or anything towards the end. So you're welcome to just think of your questions and keep them in your mind, but I've created a link where if you visit the link you can pop your questions in, and then we can visit that at the end just so that the questions don't come through the presentation. So I'll pop the link in the question box. It's just an opportunity to write your questions down or comments and we can look at them at the end. But if you do have any questions that you just want to ask at the end, if you let us know them at the end rather than put them in the chat box through the presentation, just so we can focus on that. But yeah, I'm going to hand her over to Khandiz. So thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Hannah and Elise, and thank you to ASP for hosting me, and thank you every single one of you who signed up to listen to me talk about an art project. The reason I've asked for questions not to be sort of thrown in the middle is because I get really distracted and we won't get through it. So I appreciate that they come to the end, and I do hope that by the end of this we can actually have a conversation, because I find it really intimidating just talking about myself and presenting my work. But for some context, I'll share my screen in a second. My background is I was a hair and makeup artist for 20 years, and I worked across fashion, film, advertising, and I when I moved to the UK in 2012, I had this real epiphany of how I lived my life one way, and I was a total workaholic and spent most of my time trying to work, but it totally didn't align with my philosophy of life. And I went down this journey of how I could use makeup as a mechanism to engage with people. I learned about organic farming. I learned about the impact on agriculture. I learned about the wider systems involved with that. And now I work in sustainability as a sustainability consultant. I'm a chartered environmentalist and work with businesses of all sizes, but really specialize in micro and SMEs, and do it as a way to, I think people often struggle. How did you go from makeup to sustainability? And this is really how. But the project I'm going to present to you this evening is called, as you've heard, the I Am Impact Project. And I'm going to share my screen. I'll take you through some of the slides. Is that sharing the right screen? Yes, it is. So this is the work. It's a series of prints where I am painting conversation pieces straight onto the human body around the 9 planetary boundaries. That's the starting point. It looks at our impact on these environmental tipping points and their impacts on us. And hopefully that we can have a conversation about and take agency and ownership that we do have an impact. It can be a positive or a negative impact, but equally that we can only do so much as individuals, but when we come together collectively, a lot more can happen. So while I do think that there needs to be significantly more input from government and legislation and businesses, the project really focuses around each of us as human beings. So this is really the start of it. It's been going since 2019. And I was at the XR event, one of the very, very first Extinction Rebellion protests outside Fashion Week in London in 2019. And we were standing there doing swarms. Now, I'm not sure if you are aware of a swarm, but essentially you block the street for 7 minutes, of course, when we could still protest legally, and then you let the cars go through for 3 minutes. And it really struck me that we weren't asked to stop people to switch off their engines and idling, because idling is where the most of the emissions are generated. And so I spoke to the leader of the group and I said, well, can I ask people to turn off their engines while they're waiting? And she was like, absolutely, that's great. So I took it upon myself to go through the traffic, and whether I had to flirt with them or talk about it's going to be better for your pocket or have a conversation, just getting people to switch their engines off. And I'd say about 70% actually did. I found like quite a high turnover when you had conversation. And I got to this one car, and it was a big shiny blue Mercedes-Benz. And in it, there was this young 20-something couple who clearly cared about their outward presentation. They were very like tight ponytails, lots of fillers, probably into steroids. I know I'm making an assumption, but hopefully you get the picture. And the guy started swearing at me and like telling me what an inconvenience this is. And I sort of just thought to myself, we have no idea what is coming down the line. But it really struck me on my way home that that's the audience I need to be able to have a conversation with, because it's super easy for us when you know about these things and care about our relationship with nature, that we get into a bubble. So how do we have conversations with people who don't see or care, and I got really fascinated about the body. So this is where the project started. These are some of the next slides. So again, just conversation starters. My hope is that the images are beautiful enough that they could be on somebody's wall, and we get to ask, what's it about, or inquire, or feel uncomfortable, or feel excited, but just that's what I think where art has such a powerful mechanism, is it can really make us feel. And we can't talk about reducing consumerism if we don't talk about our relationship with it, the psychology of these things. So that really governs my work. This is some more of the recent work, which it started in 2019 and then obviously took a long break from COVID. So, and at the end, if you want me to go back over any, I'd be happy to explain them. But for now, I'm just going to show you. But the one with the green is algal blooms. It's inspired by algal blooms and phosphorus and nitrogen runoff and what happens to that. And on the website, there's also narrative about these things. So it's not just the image. But what I find really quite powerful about doing these paintings on bodies is the conversations that come out of it. So Reese, who was my beautiful, beautiful model for my algal blooms and my Namora jellyfish, which I'll show you in a minute. He's from a Jamaican background, and while I was painting on him, he was asking about, what is this? What's happening out there? And he's like, I had no idea. I really want to take this back to my community and share it with them. And I think that for me was a really unexpected thing that has come out of it, is how we can use art in a very personal way. And going back to my background in makeup, it's one of the few jobs where you have the incredible privilege of being this close to somebody's nose. There's really not many jobs, unless you may be a dentist or an esthetician, where you are in somebody's personal space. And the way that you can communicate things in a far more gentle way has been really interesting to be able to look back now and observe that relationship. So the image on the right is my very, very dear friend, Ruth Madeley. She's an actress. She's a wheelchair user, disability activist. And that's a conversation piece about ozone, because of course it's one of the 9 planetary boundaries. So I'm very fortunate that I've met some amazing people who have just said, yes, paint on me, paint on my body. Moving on to the next slide. So through this project, I then decided to go and really study and focus my attention on becoming a sustainability consultant. I hate the word sustainability with an absolute passion. I think it's a totally inadequate word. But what's come of it is a way that hopefully will help anyone, whether you are another consultant, an artist, an educator, just someone who gets as frustrated with people misusing this word sustainability as I do, is the analogy that has come from it. The image on this image here, actually I painted today, and it's a conversation around microplastics. So my model, my global citizen, as I like to call them, she's actually an incredible young woman. She's a doctor, and she studies, a scientist, and studies microplastics in the environment. And so it's been a really nice way to take science, take her research, and reappropriate in a way that she can have conversations with layman's people that as a scientist, they don't often get a chance to get their work out. So this is another totally unexpected thing that's come from the project. There's a quote. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of Donella Meadows. I'm sure most of you who work in any type of systems change have. But for me, it's her quote that really, really just resonates. And she wrote it in her diary in 1995. And it was in response to Herman Daly's explication of sustainability, which really sort of broke down what it means. And she said this: sustainability means all that to me and more. It means a complete vision of the world I want to work for and live in. It contains components of spirituality, of community, of decentralization, of a complete rethinking of the way we use our time, define our jobs, and bestow power upon governments and corporations. Sustainability is a terribly inadequate word for what I mean. Any word of 6 syllables is way too long to organize a popular movement around, and at the same time, way too short to encompass a whole vision. And too many people hear it as sustaining the world we have now, whereas I really mean fomenting a revolution. I don't know if that sort of touches anybody else as much as it touches me, but every time I read it, I get excited to and to keep going with the work and keep going with the conversations. And so through my training and going into a very, very corporate world, which I have no background in, I was seeing all these models. So we've got the Venn diagram, the people, planet, profit, or the triple bottom line. And just very sort of naively looking at it, it absolutely didn't make sense to me as a model, because you're still always trying to get like one of those things into the middle. There was no cohesion, there was no relationship. And then I found the nested model. For those of you who aren't aware, this is called the 3 nested dependencies model of sustainability. And what I really liked about it is it showed the relationship of these 3 elements, but it also showed them in the order of importance, or the order of relationship, I think, is a nicer point of view. And off the back of the work of the art project, but also, like, how do I explain sustainability to a 5-year-old or an 85-year-old? And it really struck me that, you know, sustainability is a system, right? It's interdependent systems. It's maintaining profits without the depletion of natural resources or infringing on human rights, so that there is enough for everyone forever, so that we can meet these really great descriptions of sustainability, but very often without the how or what that means to the everyday person. And it struck me that the one system every single human being on this planet has a shared experience of, without having to understand it, is the human body. And so my I am impact, or my body analogy, is exactly that. It's reframing that 3 nested models into the very basic system of the skeleton, the muscular system, and the skin. So if we think about the economy as the skeleton, and I use the economy very, very intentionally, or the word economy very intentionally, because the root of it is to maintain the home. And I think that, you know, it's important that we can have a conversation in the world we live in now. We are reliant on the flow and exchange of goods and money. That's not going anywhere. But if that can become the structure, the support, it allows us to stand and move forward. When we break a bone, we can acknowledge that there is a physical hurt, there is pain, we can feel it, but we can splint it and it recovers. And the same way as whether it's our personal budget, we can go through really tough times, the GDP can be down, there can be all these big impacts on the economy or the finances, but they are recoverable. And I found out the other day, I was reading some more books on the body, that bone tissue is the only tissue in the human body that doesn't form a scar when it heals. And it can fill in gaps. It can actually grow. So you can have space between your bones and it can grow together. And that's the beautiful thing that's come out of this, is I just keep learning more and more of these little great analogies that we can tie back to the economy. So society is likened to the muscular system. It's responsible for our movement, complex system of different groups, reconfigured the natural world. You know, society has had a big impact on the environment. When the muscles are strong, the bones are strong. But when the muscles are artificially inflated, I'm going to use the sort of, again, the analogy of steroids or going to the gym and exercising, but you're not taking care of the rest of the system, there's a lag effect, and then it has these other very unpleasant ramifications to the system as a whole. And then the skin, like the environment, is likened to the environment, because just like this, it's designed to protect us. It's literally designed to protect us. And I know the body has been used for many, many generations. It's been used in indigenous communities. We talk about the earth as a body and Gaia. We talk about this. I think what's hopefully different, and certainly I've never seen it explained like this, or never seen anybody else explain it, sustainability like these as systems. So we scratch ourselves, we recover, we lose a few species, we still flourish as a species. But we lose too much of that ecosystem. We lose too much of that, the ecosystems on our skin. Our whole system really suffers. The other thing, you know, now we've got this body, right? We've got this functioning body, and we'll get to the organs because those are going to come into the planetary boundaries in a minute. But we have 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels that we're talking about. I feel it's safe to say that nearly every single one of us has experienced a fever in our lifetime. Well, that's the system going into fever. That's when people don't understand what that 1.5 or 2 or 3, or how up we're going. This becomes a way to say, well, that is our body going into fever. It has a massive impact on all these other things, all these other systems. It's also, now we have this human form. It is us that we are trying to save. Nature will get on without us. I have no doubt about that. But the work that we are all trying to do is really to save humanity as a species within nature, in relation to nature, in collaboration with nature. And so I hope that this becomes a tool that if anybody wants a way to explain to people when they say, oh, we're sustainable, we're reducing our carbon emissions. Great. That's not sustainability. Or we're doing our bit. We've got a cycle to work scheme. Our staff are happy. Fantastic. That's not sustainability. It's just one thread as part of this bigger system. The other thing that I think is important, and it goes back to some of the body painting, is the vulnerability of being naked. So I've really intentionally kept the work around painting on skin, because we are vulnerable. When we are naked, we are vulnerable, the same way as nature is vulnerable now from our relationship with it and impact on it. So this is just some more slides. I wanted to be able to show in this slide, when I speak about the economy, how this analogy can really scale, and why I haven't made it more complicated, because we can talk about it in all different scenarios. But what I did think about, Gwen, since our last conversation, the one way I would possibly explain, because for those of you who aren't aware, there's an extended model of the 3 nested models, and so businesses come under the economy. But businesses almost become the bone marrow, right? If businesses can truly be a force for good, if they can be there to support society and within the confines of the environment, there is a space for them, and they become useful, but not at the extent of never-ending profit. I always kind of stop at this moment and ask people to close your eyes. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and imagine what the body would look like if our skeleton was on the outside. And if anybody wants to throw in their description, please pop on and say something, because now I just feel like I'm talking to myself. Have I been? Oh, thanks, Gwen.
I feel like I've been turned inside out and back to front.
Thank you. Yes, it is absolutely. It's inside out, it's back to front, but it's also grotesque. Like if our skeletons, as we see bodies at the moment, right? If our skeletons on the outside, it's not a beautiful thing. It's not a whole functioning system. Everything else would collapse in on it. And like a locust, I love that. Thank you, Sarah. But going back to this whole conversation, we've heard it. There's no fashion on a dead planet. A skeleton is the symbol of death across nearly every culture in the world. I say the caveat of every culture because I don't know that for a fact, but I think it's safe to say that very many cultures around the world, a skeleton with nothing else is the symbol of death. So an economy, money, without being there to support muscles and skin, of course, it is really, there's no relevance to it. There is no life to it. So the muscles. In Star Trek, a skeleton on the outside could be called a transporter accident. Thank you, Timo. Sorry, apologies. Technical issues. So these are all the sort of conversations in a more business space, I suppose. But I've really been thinking about, if we stop this language of sustainability for now, and we talk about getting the system healthy, right? Everybody, regardless of whether you're in a wheelchair, whether you have you carrying a few extra kilograms, whether you've got a heart condition, we all need different things to be healthy. We all need different inputs. We need different nutrients. We need time out to nature. And it's all very good and well going to the gym every day, but if you're not taking care of your mental health or what you're eating, or the system isn't healthy. So how do we get these systems healthy? And I know the great work that the Organization of Responsible Businesses, Jill, I know you're on the call, is doing fantastic work there. I think it's so important that we have this conversation. Let's get healthy, whatever that means, and so that we can sustain and so that we can think about regenerating. Again, moving on to the skin. I don't know for anybody else in the room, but we use these words as big coveralls. We throw them out, but it's so important to be able to articulate what the different elements and aspects and ecosystems that we're talking about are, so people understand that it's not just carbon emissions, or but it's the relationship between these ecosystems. They literally live on our skin. We have ecosystems of microbes on our skin that keep us healthy. We are more microbes than we are human. That stuff just blows my mind. And it's the same out in nature, out in the environment. There's all these different ecosystems that are contributing to us being a healthy, stable state. So I'm wrapping up soon so we can just have a chat. So we as human beings have accelerated climate change, are responsible for ecosystem decline and biodiversity loss, have polluted rivers and oceans with chemical runoff of plastic and other pollutions, have exploited land productivity and people, have overfished stocks, have changed land systems, have punctured polluted the air we need to breathe for all life. But we also have the capacity, skills, and know-how to convert our impact from a negative into a positive one, an impact that can sustain the perfectly imbalanced ecosystems we rely on to support us and other species. So that's pretty much the work that I've been doing in a nutshell. It's an ever-evolving conversation, and if it's a useful tool, it's open, it's Creative Commons with attribution. So I've made some slides if anybody would like to use them for whatever purpose. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gwyn, I've just had a phone call from my son to say he's finishing early and can I go and pick him up? I'm not sure, can people hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, Khandiz. I really love the way in which you're engaging and using your makeup skills through body art. It strikes me as such a brilliant way of generating shared meaning and developing an intimate, really nuanced ability to have the kind of really nuanced dialogue that it takes to, you know, you're talking about how do you engage with the sort of people that you met in the car. And it strikes me, it's a way of breaking down those barriers, that defense that we all have around us. So I just wanted to say amazing. In our business, I'm in construction. So we have some, you know, some quite, I suppose, people that wear their shells, if you like, in the world of construction. And I'm just thinking your sort of approach, I could see my team really enjoying hearing about what you do. So let's have a conversation about that. And I also just wanted to say what struck me about what you were saying was that we work with the 5 capitals model as our core, one of our core ways of looking at the world, which is my kind of go-to in helping people understand, as you were saying, that nested model. The outer limits are the natural environment and the carrying capacity, and so then we're continually reminding people that we have our KPIs around those 4 other capitals within the ecological capital for very, very good systems-based reasons. So anyway, that, you know, we find that model works well for us, and it has obviously lots of read across to your core model as well. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, and I think there's a real space and need for the kind of communicating you're doing.
Thank you very much for that, Linda. Yeah, I definitely talk about the 5 capitals model and know it quite well. So I would always happy to have a conversation, and thank you very much for saying that. I appreciate that. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much. Lovely to see you all. And sorry I have to dash off. Bye-bye.
Well, did any questions come in? I mean, anybody can put their speaker on now. Now I'm just talking to myself. It's really uncomfortable.
Thanks, Khandiz. That was brilliant. Thank you. Yes, we did have a few come through on the link. We've actually got quite a lot in the chat box if people can see that as well, which is obviously nice to see some comments, obviously, when we were speaking through the presentation. A question that did come up was in response to the word sustainability. What other word would you use instead of sustainability if you were to like replace that? I think it's
a great question, and I don't know that there there is another word. So my take on it is this. My take on it is we don't have time to come up with another word. If it's used well and correctly, it's a great word. The reason I don't like it is because of how it's misused, and it's just become this marketing thing. So I suppose that gives it some clarity. I don't know that there is a better word, but we have to really update the meaning so everybody's speaking the same language when they're using it.
Yeah, completely. And I think that question's really important as well, in the fact that sometimes the word sustainability can really tweak and be interpreted in quite different ways, and it is quite a broad word, isn't it? You can relate to it in so many different ways. We've had that, me and Gwyn have had that discussion a few times. Like, it's quite a opening. I think if you were to ask the question to everybody, I mean each individual would answer it differently, how you would like define sustainability, for sure.
To that point, Elise, the story of my like absolute fascination with the word is because I went to the English dictionary to find out what sustainability meant, and it was an either or. It was like you could pick and choose. It's either to maintain finances at a certain rate, or it's not depleting natural resources. And I just thought that in itself is incredibly problematic, that if the dictionary is our starting point of language, even if it's the online dictionary, if you are going to the dictionary to find out the definition, and it doesn't actually include a holistic definition in the first place, of course people are not going to use it correctly. And there was a woman who petitioned the English dictionary to change the definition of woman. I don't know if you've heard this story, but historically the word woman in the dictionary was wench, wife, like just all these really derogatory, unhelpful words about all the wonderful things a woman can be. And she successfully had the definition updated. And I thought, well, why can't we do that for the word sustainability, so that it's a new word that we can use going forward? It can mean all those other things, but anyway, so that's that's.
Just to build on that, Khandiz, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for a wonderful presentation. I was in the Oxford Dictionary online the other day looking for a definition. I know what it means, but so what do other people think the word somatic means? As a shiatsu practitioner for 25 years. And somatic, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is the body as opposed to the mind.
Wow.
Which for my made all my skin crawl. But and as opposed to the mind, you know, they come out in battle every day, sort of. They might do for some people. But and thirdly, the word sustainability, I don't think there's anything wrong with it per se. It's the way that people talk about it, and how people are framing their arguments. So the context. And so as if reaching sustainability was going to be the end goal. Mm-hmm. And of course it isn't. It's a lifestyle. Everybody here knows what the word sustainability means to them. But so the context, and I think if we, myself included, could all be more conscious of how we were using it, that our language in itself would be an education for anybody that we were talking to, that would naturally provoke a deeper conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. I agree. That's how I feel about it. But it does. I clearly get very impassioned about these words that they're so powerful. They can mean so much. I mean, when it's like the body and the mind, they need to work together.
I think being misused so much. If you've got a double definition, you can always go to one rather than the other.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of the problem here is that I work with a group of sustainability directors and leaders of large corporates, and they wanted to move the sustainability career to being chartered. And I said, that's fine, but it'll take 500 years, because that's how long it took us to understand accountancy. And we're just starting to play with the idea, and play is probably not too much of a wrong word either, to play with sustainability. We've never had to think about it as a species until the last 30 or 40 years. It's a totally new concept. And I think, you know, one of the things I realized when I got into this world of I don't know what I do and I can't explain what I do to anybody else, but I'm really cool with it, was to give up the idea of a business card. Because if I give a business card that says consultant, people go, ah, and they think they know what I am. I don't know what I am, so I don't have a business card now. So when people says, what do you do? I normally say, I don't know, but it's great fun. And we have a conversation about it, or they walk off because they realize they've just talked to a complete lunatic. But it's the conversation. Like, you know, Timo and I had 4 hours of conversation today, and I think we left wanting more. But I think with sustainability, all the definitions that have been proposed tonight, you used enough for everyone forever. That's one of my favorites. But we need the conversation to explore the different dimensions and the different potential meanings of it. The beauty of your approach to me, Khandiz, that you know, it's based on the nature of who we are and what we are, and our role within nature. So it's not some abstract, artificial, we're learning to live without robbing future generations. It says no, we are part of nature. It's the fractal aspect, that our body is a fractal that's replicated throughout the whole of nature, right up to the universes, and therefore it's philosophically absolutely grounded. And that's what we need to do. We need to have conversations that don't look for sound bites and simple things that people can understand, because those simple sound bites are never embracing the complexity of what nature is and what our role and what we're doing to nature. So I think we've just got to say, okay, we don't want a sound bite, we want a conversation. I want to sit down with this person and say, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to your children? How do you feel as an adult in your role in what's happening today? Because I can't find a word that expresses all that yet. And maybe we will, but maybe it would just be a distraction and be hijacked if we did find a word. So I really
would
love
come out
what
of
you're
the
doing.
conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gwyn.
Actually, Gwyn, because you mentioned me, I would say that in our conversation, a word that came up in the context of art, as well, very connected to it, is soul. That's not an explanatory word, but I find myself using that more. Soulful futures, soulful connection, because soul for me as an artist is about emotional truth, which is a storytelling thing. So Khandiz, you know, as an artist, you are very well positioned to cut straight to the soul, the emotional truth of something. And that was just the sort of conversation that Gwyn and I were having with each other today.
Are you sick of each other yet?
No, we just out.
No, I think it's a beautiful word. It's a beautiful word. And also, the other part that didn't come up when I'm just staring at a screen rambling through these things is, once we have this whole form, right, we are not islands. We have to connect with other people. It doesn't matter if I'm a total introvert and want to see, no, I am completely dependent on the glass that I'm drinking that's made from somebody. That we as a species have so much capacity, but we have to depend on each other and have that relationship and build and keep growing. And I think that's the other thing that I just wanted to sort of highlight, which I don't know that I touched, is beyond the single person, because it's not just one, it's us, and it's only in us coming together and meeting and sharing ideas and engaging and sometimes having uncomfortable conversations that we move forward, and there is a soul connection, and that's special.
And isn't that the role of art? You know, that allows us not to be sycophantic, but Timo did a TEDx talk last week on the role of art, so please do check that out, because it was just like, yeah, absolutely, art allows us to interpret from our own experience the same image, the same experience with other people who are going to have other interpretations, and we understand ourselves better, and therefore we can discuss solutions and come up with, you know, just like cave painters found that vegetable dye on their hands, they could actually portray portray things that we can understand today. Sorry, I cut across somebody, but yeah, full stop.
All right. You're right. Sustainability as a word, it doesn't evoke responsibility or crisis or action. But by doing what you've done, you've kind of embodied it, and that gives it a body that is vulnerable. And sustainability being a word, it's just a label, and it just has no soul, as Tim said. So just showing the body is much more, it gives much more of a reaction, and it's much more real and personal than a word.
Well, I'm glad you got that out of that. Thank you for sharing that, Alan.
There's a few more questions that I think would be good to discuss. Someone asked, what happens when you use this analogy with business people?
It goes down quite well. It makes it really goes down quite well. I've seen definitely middle-aged white men. I've got no problem with them, but go, oh, like there's a very visceral reaction. And I've had some people come back and try and tear it apart, and I think there will just always be people like that, and you get used to people being like that. But for the most part, it's definitely opened conversation to talk about it more. It's also just the start of the conversation. It's just a way to say, when we talk about sustainability, let's not just talk about one element of it and think that it's going to make the system healthy, make your business healthy so that you can sustain. I don't know if anybody here is a musician. Do we have any musicians on the call?
Wow.
So what really struck me, I don't know if it's a note or what it is, because I'm not a musician, but sustain on a piano, on a note, you can actually see it. It does this. And I think that's such a powerful image as well. Like people are talking about sustainability moving to the future, but it's just maintaining. It's maintaining something. So if we're not maintaining something at a healthy state, what are we doing? So for musicians, that's a good analogy for you as well. Very nice visual.
I like it. I've not thought of it that way, as a sustainable note before. Yeah. Oh, you got me thinking now. That's good poetry.
Yeah. Do I just come in if I want to make a comment, or do I have to ask somebody to get in?
Yeah.
Right. I just wanted to highlight the value of Khandiz's work in the context of taking a closer look at how human beings function and the distinction between the conscious and the unconscious. For example, I don't know how many people are familiar with the Ames window, that's AMES, where you see something, a solid object going through a window when you know it can't, but you see it because your brain is programmed to rectangular windows. It's the same with the people who are not programmed to rectangular windows don't see it. It's the same with things like the placebo, where they find that you can tell the person it's a dummy pill and the placebo effect still kicks in. So my interest is to take a closer look at this distinction between information that gets through to impact behavior and information that just floats around. Things like the invisible gorilla, there's a book about this, shows that data is very, very highly selective in what goes through to the brain. And the way that I try to bring all this stuff together is to talk about the fact that the human brain is programmed. And it's programmed by 3 stories about location, origins, and identity. And any datum that is outside that programming is imperceptible to the brain that you're dealing with. So when you're dealing with the person in the blue Mercedes, his whole programming is about getting somewhere, which means having more money, more possessions, a beautiful girl, all those kinds of things. And the sustainability information doesn't get through. It's more likely to get through with your pictures, Khandiz, than with my words. But the starting point needs to be that unless we can engage with the programming aspect of how the brain functions, we can only deal with people who are already converted. You're preaching to the choir. And how do you deal with the people who are outside? Having said that, the 3 stories that we are programmed with have actually been changed by science, but nobody sees it because it's outside their program.
Wow.
The first generation that will get the 3 new stories, I mean, for example, we had a multidimensional universe before Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton, and then it became monodimensional. Heaven and hell were abolished, God was made homeless, and it was all physical. Now physics says, actually, no, it's multidimensional, and because we are so anthropocentric, we say there are parallel universes. I think that's a piece of puerile interpretation of the data, that what it is that human senses can match a certain set of frequencies. And we are calling that a universe. That's nonsense. It's one set of frequencies in the universe. And there are people who apparently can actually match other frequencies outside the normal range. So the first generation that gets taught that physics are going to see things differently, right? At the moment, we're still teaching people a physical universe, which is like teaching them the flat earth. It's all outdated. And so engaging with this dimension that the brain is programmed, the way that Max Planck put it, he said, science proceeds funeral by funeral. It's not a question of the validity of the datum, it's a question of the validity, the breadth of vision of the programming of the scientist. And the old scientists who lack neuroplasticity, they can't take in a datum that is contradictory to their programming. And for me, that needs to be the starting point. We have to engage with what is the programming.
Mm.
They're really going to change behavior. Otherwise, people are going to say, oh yeah, it's a dummy pill. They still take it and they still get better.
Wow.
Just throw that in.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you for throwing that in. I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Thanks,
Another
Ranjan.
really interesting. Oh, sorry, who was
No,
speaking?
go on, Liz.
Thanks, Gwen. Just something else very interesting that was asked, Candice, was do you feel your artistic lens and sensibility enables you to see the world differently? Maybe you see things differently in comparison to technologists and scientists, stuff that maybe they can't see.
Wow, that's a big question. I think we all see things differently. We all seeing it from our own experiences, from our own perspective, from things that have happened to us. I guess, I mean, I still struggle to call myself an artist, if I'm totally honest. It's just an extension of who I am, and to what Gwyn was saying earlier about, like, you know, not really being able to define it. I do and have done lots of things, and people have always been really confused by all the things. So sustainable websites, I've even been an estate agent at some point in my life. I've done donor research and now do consulting, hair and makeup, creative direction. And all of those things for me are ways of expressing, and it's just so happened that, you know, it's come to the body and that I've painted on, and I've found this as my current creative practice. But I couldn't explain what I did to people, and then I came up with this really pretentious, silly title, and it's called I'm a creative sustainabilist. But it was the first time that people were like, oh, okay, I mean, yeah, kind of get that. Like, what does that mean? Rather than, but how do you do this and this and this? None of these things make sense. And now I just say, well, I use creativity in varying different threads to enable people to understand what sustainability means, to enable sustainable thought and practice. So I don't know if that really answered the question, because I don't see myself as this pure artist. I see myself as part scientist, and I see myself as, like, I'm interested in technology, I'm interested in all these things, and it all really contributes to my work. But I'm equally interested in, you know, other cultural philosophies like wabi-sabi, and yeah, I'm always learning, but I find so much beauty in imperfection. And I think that for me is what hopefully my art shows, is that something doesn't need to be pixel perfect to resonate or to make somebody feel something. And that's where the sort of expression is right now. I mean, who knows what it'll be in 5 years? I get bored quite quickly.
I would say there actually that you have the struggle of the generalist. And although you might be used to being seen as the arty one in a lot of rooms, actually a generalist has become, weirdly, my wife has always called herself a generalist in a negative way. I did geography. Actually, she's a sense maker, and so are you. And it's becoming a sort of use, or I don't know, more positive word in our times for making connections. But I'd add that a friend of mine, Marcus John Henry Brown, he's a performance artist.
That's a long name.
I know. He's a long person, but has a long mind. He said he goes into corporate spaces and does art performances, but he comes from a creative direction background. He said to me, Timo, when I used to go into meetings and say to people, I'm a creative director, nobody knows what that means. Now, those of us in the business know what it means. It seems quite simple, but most business people go, what? He said, as soon as I had the courage to just say, I am an artist, and that was it, all these business people and men in suits went, oh, right, okay. And they just had a much better idea of what he did. And it sort of covered everything. So in a way, you could just sort of say, I'm an artist. And everything that could come under that.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I suppose it's just getting comfortable with those certain words. For so long, I've had makeup artists attached to it. I have absolutely no interest in makeup, never have. You can give me anything to paint on. I do not care about product. What can I do to tell a story with it? What can I do to enhance a story? What can I do to make people feel different? That's it. I literally paint with whatever. Sometimes I use skincare to create masks, but I think for me, because I've always had that sort of attachment to artists, that's possibly been why I sort of struggled to just use it as the standalone word.
But to me, it's got so many more dimensions than we've actually covered tonight, because this is dilemma, as Timo says, about people want to pigeonhole us. Oh, you're an accountant, you're a sustainability guy, you're an artist, you're a creative director, when actually we are many things. I started introducing myself at meetings as I'm a father, because I think that shared with most of the men in the room something in common. Now, not everybody, but it meant so much more than saying I'm a XYZ. And suddenly they realized that in this business meeting, there was a person standing up saying, I'm a father. And they saw that I meant an awful lot by that. I was proud of it and it was significant. But I think one of the problems we've got is that I have a scientific background, and I just felt that for years I was forced into that role and into that myopic role of seeing the world through logic and cause and effect. And it's been exactly what Ranjan was saying. I was programmed to see the world through a certain set of instruments. And in talking to yourself, Khandiz, and Mark and Alan and Timo, I see the world radically differently. Suddenly I realize, oh, these other views, these other senses that I'm now encouraged to use, just give me a completely different perspective. And I'm still only seeing, as Ranjan says, a very small part of the universe through a set frequency range, when actually the frequency range is infinite. And so the beauty of what I think, especially tonight, what you've shown is that the world can look different when you start with a different lens. And to me, sustainability is the outcome of conscious thinking. Therefore, to be conscious, we need to be capable of interpreting and sensing and understanding. And what you've offered tonight is a tool for me that you can just smash open their little lens that they use and offer them different ones. And I'm hooked on it at the moment, but I do believe that's what the artists in the room are showing us is possible.
Well, I feel very privileged to be amongst many great artists in this room.
Perfectly illustrated, Gwyn. Why you might look at a set of lungs in a jar in formaldehyde, but when we see it painted on a body, we are directly, you know, the interpretations are so or can be so different, because it's a direct challenge to, you know, how healthy are those lungs? What's affecting those lungs? You know, those 3 circles, those lungs are affected by the environment, affected by what we put in our body, etc., etc. So, yeah, perfect.
I'm going to step in here, if you like, as a mediator, because what I'm hearing is my voice a lot, and Timo's and other men's. I haven't heard anything from Anne, from Sarah, from Lucia, from Hannah, from Elise, from Beck. I'd love to hear, and Sophia, I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
We do have a fair few comments in the chat box, and some from Sarah as well. Thank you, Sarah. I think I'm really interested if we discuss before using sustainability, surely we need a common understanding of what we want to sustain. I know we touched on that a little bit, but I think that's just there's so much, isn't there, that we could sort of think about, but I think that's really important. And there's quite a lot in the chat box, actually. Does anyone else want to jump in with any more comments that they might have? Bex?
Yeah, just want to follow on from Colin's comment. I think like the lungs is such an important element of the whole model, because without it, you know, breath is just the symbol of life. You know, it needs to run through all of those circles. It needs to be, you know, lungs need to be healthy to be able to do the work that you need to do, but also the environment needs to be able to breathe. So I think there's just that beautiful correlation. I think you picked that up beautifully in you know, the lungs painted on the body as well. It's just, yeah, how important it is. Everything kind of flows, and it flows through those circles and around. It's not like a one-way system at all.
Can I build on that, Bex, just for a second? That
yeah.
I've repeated this quote thousands of times now. One of my teachers of the Japanese art of ancient healing said, until we can all understand the function of our own lungs, then we will continue to cut down the rainforest.
Wow.
So it's understanding how the universe is actually within us, and that by not paying attention to the planet, we are impacting seriously our own inner being. So thank you.
So Sarah, you asked about where the quote was from. So it's Donella Meadows. I literally found it about 3 years ago on a deep dive of thread. Like, I don't have the link to where I found it, but it's a quote by Donella Meadows. Thank you, Sophia. Thanks, everybody.
What I find fascinating as well, like, is how everyone's come together and like brought ideas like together with this. Like, that's what part of like what I think ASP is all about, because like tonight, like, you've come in like solo with your idea and your project, and everyone's contributed, and it's been really fascinating hearing what everyone's had to say as well.
It's, for me, it's been incredible. It's made it so much more interesting than me just talking about it, because I do sometimes feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about my work. So really, thank you to everybody who's contributed. I think that's the sort of beauty of it, and hopefully it's useful to you, and you take it forth, and we can keep growing the conversation and keep growing where this analogy can go. Because I just walk down the street and like, oh, I can talk about it like this, or we could do. Thank you, Jill.
Hannah.
Gwen, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah, thanks. I'm just saying that, Hannah and Elise, I know you're holding this meeting together behind the scenes, looking at everything, but I really would love to hear what you're thinking and what your views are. Just so step out of the administration role and.
So, I mean, I really like the the analogy between the muscles and the bones, and how the strength reference comes in the sense that without the muscle supporting with the bones, and I think for me, we all tackling so much in life, so much happens day to day. I think coming across this project, this sort of idea, it's given me the reminder that with things in life, how do I explain this? It's not always one thing on its own. There's a lot that comes to it. So I think, if there's one thing can't happen without something else, and something might need the support of something else, for example. And I think that can be addressed with anything and seen in a different approach. But I think it's quite a nice reminder that something just doesn't just come from itself. It has to have other things to support it. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone. I have some people nodding, which is good. But I think it's a nice reminder. And I would say I'm quite a practical person, but I'm not overly creative. So it's quite refreshing to have a sort of artistic approach to something, especially sustainability, in which we're interested in. Yeah.
I completely agree with Elise. And like when me and Elise first met Khandiz, like I was just like blown away with our first conversation, because like it was the first thing I've visually seen that represents like I don't want to say the term sustainability, but like it's the first thing I've seen visually that I've actually like remembered and like fascinated by. Like whenever I've seen like the pillars of sustainability, like when I've learned like and studied about it, like I've never found something so like that you can apply to yourself. Like I think, like as Elise said, like it's something that you can apply to other situations of your life. And then I think it's like putting it down to the individual, because I think a lot of the things with the environment, like I've said, oh well, like every individuals can say, well, it's not my matter, it's like the government, like something international needs to happen. But like this actually brings it down to the human body and putting responsibility on individuals.
Yeah.
I think the other thing as well, which is like beautiful about the body analogy that you've used, Candice, is that it's like a real equalizer, because it's kind of stripping away everything else, but it's actually looking at the basic human needs as well. So it's, it's about nurturing and the shelter, but it's just kind of, it just feels like a really equalizing way of looking at it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that being said, because it's important. It's important for me that we do have an equalizing space, because we have to. We need equity in this world if we're going to get anywhere.
Just for the people listening, because we touched on it a little bit, Khandiz, the other week. So with this project that you've come up with and designed yourself, like what, apart from making great impact and influencing, what sort of your aim in the future, and where do you have hope or aim where you'd like it to go?
Yes, thank you. So the idea with the project is the prints are for sale on the website at really affordable prices. So as you've said, I've self-funded the project up until now. The idea is that each print, so each story has a budget to it, so that everybody involved gets a fair price for the day, for their time, not extortionate, but the same as you would pay if you were doing a charity job. So artists are actually, and contributors are actually getting paid. And then 100% of the profits over and above, once that budget is reached, is going to fund on the ground grassroots organizations, science research, whatever. It's just a way that this project can continue going, but also that as creatives, we're not just always giving of ourselves for free. I would love to have a piece commissioned so that we can pay artists up front and we can put it out there and have conversations. But like with pretty much everything I do, Elise, it's let's see where it goes. I would love people to contribute if it touches people, to get in touch and see how we can build on it. It's there. It's just a living, breathing thing, and it will go where it will go. Talking about living, breathing thing, the other thing that I wanted to mention that I didn't when I was talking about it, this thing of never-ending growth, this conversation about growth all the time. we, even in our own bodies, we have this finite time, right? But we can be as healthy as we can. The only thing in nature that grows unnaturally and it keeps going is cancer. And I just thought that was also such a powerful thing. Like that is continued growth. And it's really harsh, and it's you know, it's not a nice thing to have to bring up, and people are really struggling with it. But how do we use stuff that's really personal? You know, we all know somebody that's been touched by it. That's what we're asking. We're trying to grow exponentially, and we're not designed to do that. But we can be healthy for our lifetimes. Segue, sorry.
That is a very powerful statement, Khandiz. Yeah, as Beck says, you know, you brought it down to the body, the thing we understand that, you know, as someone whose body is, you know, entering the departure lounge, that sort of concept of growth, perpetual growth, as being the only thing we know that does that is cancer. What a statement! You know, I was working with some students last week, and I pointed out to them that about 18 months ago, maybe it was 12 months ago, I get lost with COVID, but a group of Manchester students rebelled against what they were being taught. They were economists, and they refused to go into the lecture rooms if they were going to be taught the current economy, because the current economy they could see as 18-year-olds was the problem, not the future. And it's always been this question of how do we, well, particularly when I'm in a university, how do I approach the subject of the economy? Because in the MBAs and the economy classes, they're teaching the current economy, which is the very thing that's not conducive to life on Earth. But what do we do instead? And that argument you've just put forward, that analogy, is so powerful. And that's what I think we need, is we need to be able to articulate what the actual impact is of the choices that we fail to even make consciously. Just condoning the current economic model is to condone essentially what you're saying, a cancer on the world. The big C word that no one wants to use. That's, to me, the truth of it. That's not an overstatement. I think that's incredibly powerful.
You always make me a little bit blushy, Gwen. Like I'm a little bit of
Blushing is good for your health.
There you go. I'll take it. I'll take it.
I have been known to talk a load of crap sometimes, so do feel free. It may not be right, but I believe it.
Thank you.
Michelle, what have you been doing apart from putting the kids back to bed? What's your views on this? Because you've got a really broad experience.
Yeah, no, they're still awake. They're not quite in bed yet. No, it was really, really interesting presentation, and I like the analogy of anything that is different, that can bring it home to people in different ways, because, you know, stuff floats people's boats like in different ways as well. So when I'm doing some business stuff at the moment, it's so dry and it's so business talk. It's all about business cases and, you know, impact assessment reports, and actually they all need a good shake up. So yeah, they really do. So if we can like try and, you know, use other tools to bring that human element, which they all seem to forget when they walk into their day job, then yeah, I think anything like that is important.
And Michelle, you are an artist as well. Possibly you were an artist before you were a sustainable. So in many senses, you're almost you're so analogous to Khandiz's role.
I think there's a few of us out there.
Yeah.
And we need more. Everybody needs to tap into that kind of creative element to, you know, actually regain the humanity and wrestle it out of the advertising gurus. So
Amazing. Soulless, going back to Timo's point, right? Yeah.
I hope that's all right, Gwen.
Could I just say some really practical things? One thing is that through ASP, we've just been doing the climate fresque training, and I've just done the next training so I can go out and do climate fresques. And this is it's so great that you've offered this as a Creative Commons, because this is so useful, and along with that, this would sit so well after that. Once we've raised people's awareness and they feel the crisis, this is a great way of bringing it right to them, really personal to their body, to them, which is really, really useful, I think. And the other thing I wanted to ask is, are you thinking, or are you already making this a physical exhibition that could tour the UK or anywhere where people can come and engage with it, walk around it and see it large, be in it?
If there is an opportunity to make it happen, yes. I would love to. I mean, in fact, in my original mock-ups, I've done billboards. I've had them like, I would love for somebody to sponsor them as billboards, that they just sort of like there, and there's a little QR code that you scan and it takes you to the website and tells a story. But where my skills haven't quite followed is then like actually taking that to fruition. So I'm hoping in conversations like this, someone's like, oh, I know someone that could maybe do that. If there's an opportunity, Alan, absolutely, in a heartbeat.
Well, I do know of one opportunity, but it's too small. But I, just from thinking about that, I feel that this definitely should be something that happens. I have a small gallery that I curate with a not-for-profit in Hull. The beauty of it is a small gallery, but it is on the outside edge of a shopping centre. And I think the juxtaposition of the cosmetics stores and throwaway goods and your exhibition would work really well. But I think if you just and I'd love to have it there, but we're too small. This needs to be bigger. But I think if you could find that opportunity, maybe like maybe we could help by I've used lots of very big shop spaces before for very big exhibitions, so maybe a disused shop somewhere in a shopping centre or somewhere in that kind of environment, or in a business district or something like that, big disused space. This would work so well large where you can be in it.
Wow.
And I could certainly help you to get to that, by all means.
Well, thank you. I mean, I don't think a small gallery, I mean, even that, amazing. Thank you. That's incredibly kind and generous of you.
By the way, Khandiz, Alan is probably the most successful creator of art and music experience. You have got Hull, the city of culture, and you carried that whole project off yourself, plus you're a creative at BBC as well. So this man has a track record, Khandiz. Don't take that lightly. He can do things. What I would mention though is that we've just been approached by the Schumacher College in Dartington to work with them. They want us to see if we can contribute to their short courses. So a few of us are going down there in February to experience it, to find out what does it feel like to be there. But right next door to the college is the Arts College. So we said we must embrace that in that visit, because of the influx of artists, with the recognition that artists are in ASP and so important. But that's something that they're offering us their entire location to imagine what we could do there. So yeah, maybe it's small, but that has got such a cachet and such a community, because what they're also offering us is actually we can promote our work and our practices to that community. And I know it's like-minded people, but it's huge and it's international. So that could be another opportunity for that. So maybe we need to talk about what we're doing more at Schumacher and whether you feel you want to be part of that. Because
You've got my number, Gwyn. You've got my number. You know I like to chat.
We'll be in contact.
Thank you.
Khandiz, I just put a link to some commissions in Bournemouth for an arts exhibition, arts festival in 2023. Commissions up to 5,000, and the topic is turbulence, which I'm sure fits your work. So it's in the chat, the link for commissions. I don't know actually where you're based, but that's a big exhibition space.
You beat me to it. I was literally typing this in a LinkedIn message to Khandiz, the same thing, because you're like me, picturing the space, aren't you? It's a big reclaimed sort of temporary exhibition space in an old store, and I was picturing your work in there as well. So yeah, nice one, Colin. Well done, mate.
That sounds
Thank you.
fantastic.
I've clicked on the link, so I'm going to check it out when we finish this call, because I'm sure everybody wants to go and get back to their lives.
But just Timo, Colin, if they won't host it, maybe we just host it. We just get an ASP art.
Well, there's other
exhibition
venues there's other venues as part of that festival around Boscombe. So yeah.
We need to go take that walk on the beach, Colin, very soon.
So nice.
Not 4 hours in this weather.
Well, it sounds to me like it needs to tour, and you have venues coming up already. This is wonderful. You need to put many together. And if you want it to come to Hull at some point, then it would be an honour to have it in our little gallery space. You can definitely do that. But yeah, it'd be great to see it somewhere big and, you know, and moving around. So and with workshops, of course. So you would have to you'd have to be there for the openings and maybe stay weekends and speak to people who come as well.
Well, thank you. I would love to start in Hull at your gallery. How about that?
That would be amazing.
Done. We'll make it happen. That's a good place to start.
Wonderful. Done.
Yeah, I love the idea of it being in unused spaces or disused spaces, because it's kind of bringing life back into it, which is what sustainability is all about as well. So it just ties in so perfectly.
Wow. I mean, you have all just really filled my soul. Thank you. Truly, like, I'm quite yeah. There'll be lots of processing after this call. Thank you.
Well, I'm delighted that you say it'll start in Hull, but there will be a lot of processing after this call. You definitely can start it in Hull anytime next year you want to, really, apart from January, which is taken. But you may get a better offer. So I'm not going to be holding you to that. So let the processing happen and let all these wonderful people come up with things. Look at the best options. And yes, the offer is open. Keep it that way.
Thank you. No, genuinely, we have proof. That's where it's starting. Wherever it goes, it's going to start in your gallery in Hull. That would be the best place to start.
Fantastic. Thank you.
How many photos are currently in your collection, Khandiz?
So there are, I don't know, to be honest. I think the first round is, I want to get one of every one of the 9 tipping points. So I'm still building up the collection, but the idea is that you have a conversation. Oh, yeah, that we could add that. So it's ever evolving. I've not counted, but every single one of the pictures that you saw up front, there's multiple images of them. So it's quite interesting. So they're all different, different crops, different points of view. And when I paint as well, I sort of paint and then I photograph it. I haven't taken all the photographs, but I've taken quite a few of the photographs as well. And then I go back and build on it. So it's actually just a really nice process. It's a really nice afternoon to just spend with somebody and play and have, yeah, it's a fun process. So if anybody wants to be painted on, you know, there's that offer as well. I need all bodies.
Old bodies or all bodies?
Both.
I just feel that there are 2 or 3. Mark sadly had to go, but there's also Nikki Saunter, who runs the Rapid Transition Alliance, who we're also talking to. She's an artist and she just creates companies like I put on shirts in the morning, and she sets things up and moves on and creates exhibitions. So I think between just, you know, not just the people on this call, but there's Nikki Saunter, there's Mark Goldthorpe, who I think would just love to pick up what Alan said and said, okay, it starts in Hull. Next time it's in Bournemouth with Colin, and next time it's going to be in Somerset with Nikki, and then next time it's going to be in Leicester with Mark. I think we could create our own, you know, moving in every sense of the word space that just appears everywhere we go. There's so much power in this idea. Brilliant.
All the other artists in the room, what are you contributing to this moving exhibition that sort of appeared in conversation?
Maybe we need a separate meeting, specific meeting to because that's like
Deal.
that's the wrong question, Khandiz.
Well, I look forward to having more conversations about this then.
As you say, Gwyn, if it links with the Schumacher stuff as well, it's, you know, it's perfect, isn't it? Hello?
You're just nodding your head or talking, Gwen, because you're on mute.
I'm trying not to talk, just nod my head. I think I've said enough tonight, sorry.
Well, if there's no more questions, should we all go and have a nice evening?
Does anyone else
Very
have
nice
anything,
evening so
any
far.
more to say?
What was that?
I said we've had a very nice evening so far. Thank you.
We have. Thank you, Khandiz. It's been brilliant.
Yeah,
Thank you very
so
much for hosting me.
And thank you for everyone else speaking and interacting. It's really nice when we can all have conversations and we all don't know each other, so it's a really nice opportunity.
I want a big shout out for Elise and Hannah, who just jumped straight into this and have just created this space for Khandiz to do her stuff. So Hannah, Elise, thank you very much. More of this. It was brilliant. Thank you, Khandiz. It was stunning.
Thank you very much.
Gwyn. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. All right.
We'll bring the meeting to an end. Thank you all. Hope you have a nice rest of your week.
Thank you all.
And please be in touch. Email me. I'm always happy to chat to anybody about anything.
Lovely.
We'll be doing that.
Oh, by the way, Khandiz has all your emails, even if you don't have hers. So you don't need to go through ASP. This could be person to person. So just go for it. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Bye-bye.
night.